Matt Birney, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tracy. Great intro. You've obviously done some research and some homework and been speaking to a couple of my cheeky friends.
How important do you think social media is as a business owner?
It's everything, everywhere. We publish in the mainstream media and we're very thankful that's our point of difference. And, those big media brands are never going away. AI is about to change the world. It is the most incredible bit of technology that's ever visited us.
What do you wish more leaders were brutally honest about?
On the political stage, I don't know if honesty is the right word, but authenticity. So many political leaders these days, the red light goes on the camera, speech and the stage look comes into play. Natural authenticity in politics is so missing these days.
Hello and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding and life from the Horizon Digital podcast recording studio here in Perth. I'm your host Tracy Fryer, the founder of Design Studio Perth, and to celebrate the launch of season 2 of the show, Design Studio Perth is offering all our listeners a free brand discovery. So if you find yourself frustrated with your current brand, use the link in the show notes below to book in a time to have a chat. Now, the Real Biz Life Chronicles is on a mission to become one of Australia's leading business podcasts, but in order to do that, we please need your help. If you do enjoy today's episode, we please ask that you like and subscribe to our channels below, or simply share this episode with a fellow business owner who is needing some inspiration. He won the unwinnable seat, he built the unbuildable business, and he smoked the brisket that stopped a neighbourhood. From Parliament to Perth's airwaves, he is a man who redefines reinvention. At 31, he made political history by flipping Labour's oldest stronghold. By 35, he was one of the youngest opposition leaders in WA. And he walked away from politics. Why? He didn't slow down. He built businesses, chaired public companies, raised tens of millions in capital, and founded a media empire that now partners with Australia's biggest outlets. He's taken a vending machine startup to WA's biggest operation, turned a BP service station side room into the state's biggest auto parts superstore, and today his firm, Bulls and Bears, provides investor media for 175 ASX-listed companies broadcast across the West, The Age, 2GB and more. Ask anyone who knows him and they'll say he's loyal, ingenious and disciplined. Off the record, he's a webmaster who draws a weekend crowd with his slow-smoked brisket, a boating enthusiast with a notorious knack for meeting every obstacle on the Swan River. This episode is about audacity, reinvention, and what it takes to keep betting on yourself again and again. Matt Birney, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tracy. Great intro. You've obviously done some research and some homework and been speaking to a couple of my cheeky friends, I suspect.
100%, Matt. Thank you so much. It's so great to have you here. I thought for our listeners you could give us a brief intro into who Matt Birney is.
Well, look, I guess fundamentally I'm a businessman. I went into business at 21, as you said, representing the seat of Kalgoorlie, and I was in business for probably, maybe 8, 9, 10 years, and then I got interested in politics, and largely because of Kalgoorlie. There was a few of us in our 20s that were in business that were very parochial about Kalgoorlie, and then all of a sudden I found myself in politics. Most people would know me for politics, but in fact politics was probably a side, a bit of a diversion from business for me, and so I went into politics for 8 years or so, and then back into business again. And so that's me, business and politics, really.
So when people ask you what you actually do, is that what you tell them?
Well, what I do now and have done for probably, I think, 13 or 14 years is Bulls and Bears. And so Bulls and Bears is something of a hybrid between a financial news media outlet that publishes in the biggest mainstream media brands across the country and an investor relations firm. And to be honest, it's probably neither of those things in a pure sense.
Sure.
But last year, as you said, we acted for about 170 ASX-listed companies, which probably puts us at the top of the stack, I suspect. And I love what I do. I mean, every other day we've got a managing director of an ASX-listed company in our boardroom briefing us about their project And I've just had a wonderful opportunity to learn over 13 or 14 years, and from people who are experts in their field. And when they get out of my boardroom, they're a crumpled mess because I'm a bit like a sponge. I'm just soaking up information from them, and it's been a terrific journey, really.
Yeah, and I've had the privilege of seeing you in action, and when you have one of your clients there, and the way you kind of mastermind things is really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the basic problem that we solve is, for an ASX listed company, they're always doing interesting things, and they make an announcement to the ASX.
Yeah.
And then they sort of sit there and wait for the people to pile in and buy their shares. But, for whatever reason, not enough people are looking at the ASX these days. People are getting their financial news from, all the big media outlets around the country. And, we've developed some wonderful partnerships with, some really terrific people in those big media outlets who get what we do, and they've just been terrific partners over a very, very long period of time. And as a result, we're bringing really good news content to bear in those big media brands, and clients are obviously happy because, they're getting more eyeballs on whatever the latest announcement was. And so we're the sort of conduit, I guess, between those ASX listed companies. They're mostly small caps, some mid caps, and the big mainstream media brands. And unlike a PR firm, we don't allow the client to mould the story or change the headline. We write it how we see it, and we publish it without showing the client. But we do, we employ very commercial people, ex-stockbrokers and ex-geologists, and I'm a pretend geologist, having lived in Kalgoorlie for 30 odd years and drunk with drillers at the bar all of that time.
Yeah.
And so if I don't say so myself, we put out some pretty good news copy, and it's real news because it did happen that day.
And Matt, I know when we met, I've heard this story. Now, Goldfields Auto Spares, it started in a BP service station side room and grew into WA's largest private auto parts superstore. What did building from scratch teach you about scale, grit, and trust in your instincts?
Well, the difference, somebody once said, it wasn't me, but somebody once said the difference between a good idea and a great idea is taking action. And, when you're in your early 20s, you're prepared to risk it all because you haven't got that much to risk.
True.
And, there was in my teenage years, I was a sales rep for Coventry's, which was a massive automotive industrial mining supplies business, but largely automotive in those days. I came full circle 20 years later to run the whole company at some point. But in my teens, I was their sales rep, and I identified a gap in the market in Kalgoorlie. Coventry's had everything you could possibly want, but it took forever to get served. And so a mate of mine, Darryl Black, who's a mechanic in Kalgoorlie, he and I sort of put our heads together and thought, well, what if we could build an auto parts business sort of in competition with Coventry's, nowhere near as big, but where we had instant service and instant deliveries and those sort of things. And we both thought it was a good idea, but had no money. And at the time, Coventry's biggest opposition was a company by the name of AMCAP.
Sure.
Very big company, had a 10, 12,000 square metre warehouse in Perth. And they used to send their sales rep to to Kalgoorlie every week, and I would run into him around the traps, and we were competitors, obviously. And it struck me at the time that it must be costing AMCAP a lot of money to pay for their sales rep to come from Perth to Kalgoorlie, accommodation and travel every week. And so my mate and I struck upon this plan to go down to and get a meeting with AMCAP and to see if they would give us stock on consignment. Whereby, they would send us all the stock and we'd promise to pay it back at some point in time. And so I remember we had a meeting with the CFO of AMCAP at the time, and we were 21, I think. And we basically said, look, I'm ex-Coventry's, I know all the people in the marketplace, and he's a mechanic, we're in and around the automotive industry. What about giving us $150,000 worth of stock on consignment and we'll pay you back over time? And I still remember he said to us, well, what collateral do you have? And we both looked at each other. We didn't know what the word collateral meant.
You're so young as
well.
well.
And it was a bit of a Pauline Hanson, please explain moment where we had to say, well, what do you mean collateral? And anyway, it turns out we had no collateral, and he pretty much laughed us out of the office. And then, as the story goes, I haven't fully confirmed all of this, but AMCAP was run by a guy at the time who was larger than life in Perth and remained larger than life for many years by the name of Bronte Housen. He'd built big automotive businesses and folded one into AMCAP, and then he built the AHG group afterwards. But so the story goes, the CFO was having a laugh about these two young guys wanted $150,000 worth of stock and they had no collateral. And so Bronte said, well, get them back. I'd like to talk to them. And so this CFO, this is 30 years ago now, I guess, and this CFO had sort of laughed us out of the office, came back with his tail between his legs and said, the boss wants to talk to you. So cut a very long story short, within about 6 weeks, $150,000 worth of stock had arrived.
Wow.
And we'd rented a side room in a BP service station. And, I think I sold my car, and I had an SLR 5000 magnificent big V8 car that everybody was in love with at the time. I sold that. And my mate put up a bit of money, enough to buy a till and a counter. In those days you had a till.
Yes.
And we had a shingle above the door and a business, and we were 21.
Gee. Yeah. And I recall a story where you went back 3 times. Was that the same guy or was that someone else?
Well, no, that was. So that was, that was a retail speed shop, if you like. Selling, you wouldn't know these terms, but selling, yellow terror heads and roller rockers for big V8 cars.
That's my brother's domain.
And over time, that morphed into mining, supplying automotive spare parts for mining companies, because we worked out that whereas the retail guy comes in and buys one set of wheel bearings, the mining companies would buy 100. And there was a very, very well-known big mining company in Kalgoorlie at the time, and they had a fleet of about 150 Land Cruisers, and we had developed a non-genuine supply of Toyota parts that we could supply into that marketplace, which is about a third the price of the genuine Toyota article. And I thought, well, I'll go out and see this mining company. They're the biggest buyers of Toyota parts in town. So I got in my XF Falcon station wagon with my white business shirt and my clipboard under my arm, all of 21 or 22 might have been. And I drove out there. In those days, you don't have to sign in or anything. I just walked straight into it. It was the biggest workshop you've probably ever seen in your life. And there was this crusty, grumpy old guy sitting on the bull bar of a car, and I said, I won't say his name, but I said, which one is so-and-so? And he said, see that guy right down the very end of the workshop? Go ask him. So I went down there and I said, are you so-and-so? He said, no, that's him back there. And so anyway, so by the time I got back, he basically said, F off, get lost. Like, these days, you'd end up in some tribunal for it. But, and all the mechanics were jeering and laughing at me, and I folded. I got straight in my XF Falcon and drove back to the shop, and on the way back, I don't know, something came over me. I thought, I'm going to have another crack at this. So it took me a couple of weeks to sort of work up the courage, went back out there again. He was just coming out of his office as I walked into the workshop, told me to F off again, and I must be dumb and stupid, things like that. And I folded again and got back in the car, drove back to the shop, and I was really annoyed at myself for folding so quickly. So a couple of weeks went by that, no, I'm going to have another go, don't care. And this time I caught him in his office. He didn't see me coming. And he was just about to let me have a volley. And I said, listen, if you just shut up for a minute, I can save you tens of thousands of dollars a month. We've got non-genuine Toyota parts. They're exactly what you're buying now, a third of the price. And he waited for a minute. In those days, they used to fax orders through.
Yes.
And he didn't say a word. He walked over to the fax machine. He just faxed through a big, long list to the local Toyota dealer to get a quote. It was about $12,000 worth. He said, you got 30 minutes, give me a quote on that. I said, right, no problem. So I flew back to the shop, quoted him all, and that account ended up being about $40,000 a month. And most, corner auto parts stores in those days, if they turned over $40,000 for the entire month, that was huge.
Yeah, because was this like the 90s?
It would have been, mid-90s. And turns out he was actually a good bloke. He was just sick of sales reps driving him mad, right? And so we had a very long relationship, and that was our sort of that was when we took that business from being a sort of a corner retail store to a very big supplier, or reasonably big supplier. And eventually we bought our own block of land and we built a superstore there. In those days, superstores were an East Coast concept. Now, super cheap and those things are everywhere, but we didn't have them privately owned in WA at the time.
Yes.
And so we got the concept out of the east and bought a block of land and built a superstore. And the night before I was due to meet with the architect, I had this vision of a a fluorescent blue castle, just because you don't want to do things by halves.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And so I told the architect the next day, can we make it look like a castle? Because it was a big concrete tilt-up thing. And you can just, tear the top bits to make it look like a castle. And then we painted it fluorescent blue, and it's still there as maybe Kalgoorlie's best-known landmark, the blue castle. And then all the shops around us started doing radio ads saying just across the road or just up the road from the big blue castle. And we had a big sign on the front saying bloody cheap auto parts, and a few mothers and housewives started writing to the paper saying how rude that was. So that was great for us. It got us a bit more publicity, and we had topless mini mokes. That's not the drivers; that's the mini moke itself. All in blue and white colours, driving around town, and we were a big thing, and only in our 20s, and we were loving
so
it.
Young.
And I had the fastest car in Kalgoorlie, of course, built by all the parts off our auto parts shop.
Matt, I'd love to know what kept you going back to that guy, because, some of us, we get rejected once and we just say, nah, we can't get back up. And it sounds like you just had this inner determination to keep going back.
It was largely born out of disappointment in myself that I didn't at least have a crack. I sort of folded very quickly twice. And but it's a good story. I tell that story to my kids. They're sick of hearing it, to be honest. But,
I really enjoyed it.
But, and that led to bigger things. So then there was an engineering firm down the road from this mining company who also had 80 or 90 Land Cruisers. And when they realised that the big mining company up the road were buying non-genuine Toyota parts from us, they started buying from us. And then it snowballed, and all the mining companies are buying things from us. And we came up with this thing, those little bottles of alcohol, like, Bundy rum and Scotch and all of that. You can get the little miniature bottles. The
little Barbie bottles, we call them at the airline.
So when we were doing deliveries out to those mine sites, we'd always fill it with 6 or 10, depending how big the order was, those little alcohol bottles. And I just, that's a fun thing to do, And I was out on one of those mine sites one day when our delivery rolled up, and 10 blokes came running from all sides of the workshop with their elbows out and their bums up into our delivery looking for the bottles. And I thought, well, there's something in that. So we kept doing that for years until alcohol got banned off mine sites and things, and everything's different now, of course.
Yeah, of course. And Matt, it sounds like you've really led the way. 21 is so young. Had you always been like that growing up? Was there something that kind of led you to be that way?
Look, I grew up with a single mother, and in Kalgoorlie, and we did it tough for years. And she worked 2 jobs for a very long time, and was my greatest supporter. But we did it tough for forever, really. We didn't have any real money, but we had a good life, and I come from 5 generations of Kalgoorlie people that many of which didn't have any flooring in their houses and things like that. So I guess there was something at some level. I was keen to be the generation that sort of reversed that trend a little bit. Yeah.
And Matt, let's talk politics. How did that happen?
Well, so look, my mates and I were all in our probably late 20s by this stage, and a lot of us had businesses. So I had Goldfields Auto Spares, and I had some good mates in real estate, and one owned a car dealership and other things. And we're all standing around one night at the Exchange Hotel, as we wanted to do on a Friday night, and it was probably approaching 6 o'clock. And I don't know, we were 3 or 4 beers deep at the time, and the news came on, and it was a bit of a defining moment. So on the 6 o'clock news, the government had announced a $40 million package for Bunbury. So they're going to build a new road, and I think they were going to upgrade the hospital and do things like that. And all of us in unison, who had sort of lived in Kalgoorlie all of our lives, all sort of said almost in unison, why does Bunbury get all this money and Kalgoorlie produces all the wealth, pays all the taxes and gets nothing? And, so I think by this stage we're about 14 beers in, and not that we were political experts or anything, but we'd come to the view that the reason Kalgoorlie never really got anything was because it had been held by the one political party for all of history. It had been Labor for 103 years. And if the Liberal Party happened to be in government, they would never spend a cent in Kalgoorlie, because why would they?
No.
History tells them that it can't be won. And if the Labor Party were in government, they wouldn't spend a cent in Kalgoorlie because why would they? History tells them they're going to win it every time. And so as a result, Kalgoorlie flew under the political radar and never got anything. And so, we came to the view that must be it. And then the next day we all went and found a local Liberal Party branch, which was, I think at the time, manned by, 8 or 9, sort of, well-meaning Liberal people, but, sort of been manning the walls for, some have looked like for 100 years. And we all signed up, so all these late 20s young guys all signed up, and then I became the president of the local branch, and we built it to about, I think, 200 members or 300 members or something like that, and we won the Australian Liberal Party Branch of the Year.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden an election was upon us, and I sort of drew the short straw to put my name on the ballot, this time around. And I mean, during that election, the Liberal Richard Court was the premier, and the Court Liberal government got wiped out. There was a 7% swing against the Liberal Party statewide. Liberal government was thrown out, and we won Kalgoorlie for the first time in history with a 7% swing the opposite direction. So it was sort of, in effect, a 14% swing. And, I still remember how naive I was at the time about, polling booths at a hardcore Labor or hardcore Liberal, and I got all these good people enthused about winning the seat of Kalgoorlie, not even thinking for a moment. You couldn't pay me to stand for a 100-year Labor seat now, because now I realise, you've got to tap people on the shoulder and say, would you mind? We know you're not going to win, right?
Yeah.
And so head office gave us no money or any of that, because I realise now I was the bunny that they said, we'll put your name on the ballot. But we sort of whipped up a lot of enthusiasm around the place. All my mates, I owe them a lot, because they were, they knew, only slightly less about politics than me. And we had a big army of people out there manning the polling booths on election day.
Yeah. And
we set up drinks and things at the Hannans Club at close of polls. And I think about 7 o'clock, the first polling booth came in, the numbers, and it was the Boulder polling booth. And this hush went over the crowd, right? There must have been 200 people, all in my yellow Matt Birney T-shirts. And my Brett Nazari, my campaign manager at the time, was on the whiteboard with the telephone, and he wrote the numbers up, and it was something like Labor 1,725, Liberal 826. And I thought, at that very moment, I noticed that everybody in the room was sunburnt. And they were sunburnt because they'd been out manning these booths for me all day, because I was so stupid in trying to convince them we could win this seat. And look at those, there's like the worst numbers you could ever possibly hope for. And, just as I was looking for a table to crawl underneath, the phone rang again, and it was the Hannans Primary School booth. And the numbers were almost exactly the same, but in reverse.
Oh, my goodness.
And so then the roofs lifted off, and anyway, in they came. And, now I know that Boulder people vote Labor and have done forever, and you can't convince them otherwise. It's a safe Labor booth.
Sure.
But I was too stupid to realise that at the time, right?
Right.
Whereas Hannans people vote Liberal, and then I thought if we can win the in-between those two, and we did. And so, one of the endearing images from that election was Kerry O'Brien was on ABC at the time, and we're all watching the election count, and Kerry O'Brien said, "The court government is gone, the Liberal Party is wiped out, Shave's gone, Kirra's gone." These are all our very big iconic ministers.
Yeah.
But what's this? The Liberals look like they've won Kalgoorlie, and you don't get a feeling like that very often.
No, I was going to say, can you describe that feeling, mate? Like, I'm goosebumping you, and it must have been so surreal.
Well, I had pictured myself crawling under a table when that first set of numbers came in.
Yes.
And then it was fabulous, and I owe everything to the people that surrounded me in that election, because they also didn't realise you can't win safe Labor seats.
Wow.
And it was that level of ignorance that we all had, me including, that ultimately won the seat for us, because now that I've been around politics for a very long time, you realise, that safe Labor seat, you're not going to win that, but we need someone to put their name on the ballot, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I guess that speaks to when you have a belief and those people buy into it, like that kind of drove things to the next level, right?
Yeah, and look, we made it about having fun, right? And so we weren't your typical political party in Kalgoorlie.
I don't imagine so.
We'd flooded all these late 20s guys in and, knew nothing about politics really. But we were all very parochial about Kalgoorlie, and there was never any argument that we were of Kalgoorlie, by Kalgoorlie and for Kalgoorlie. And ultimately I think that's probably what got me over the line in the end. It was that sort of Kalgoorlie parochialness that we had and that everybody in Kalgoorlie had. But, when I see, or when I saw, people, these, you won't know these names, but my friends like, I hesitate to name. In fact, I won't name because there's so many of them. But
sure.
Some of these people who knew nothing about politics, manning the polling booths and arguing with Labor people on the polling booths about stuff they knew nothing about. Like it's heartwarming. It's heartwarming to see.
Yeah, just because they're backed you.
Yeah.
That's that priceless. Like when people have that faith in you, like it's absolutely priceless, right?
Yeah, and you've got to repay that wherever you can, whoever you can. I went and got everybody a sporting trophy.
Nice.
Like a little statuette, and said history maker, and put their name on it, and gave it all to them. So they've all still got it on their mantelpiece. Yeah.
So wonderful. Matt, what was your biggest lesson from that journey?
From the political journey, well, I mean, politics has the highest highs and the lowest lows, right?
So I've heard.
And so if you want to have a sort of a comfortable life, don't go into politics. But if you're chasing those high highs and you can put up with the low lows, then it's a wonderful journey. And when I made my maiden speech, I said my favourite quote from US President Theodore Roosevelt that I've also driven my kids mad with over time. And this is a great learning that I took out of it. If you allow me to, I'll tell you the quote.
Yes, please share.
So Theodore Roosevelt once said words to the effect, he who tries and knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and who spends himself in pursuit of an achievement, at best knows the triumph of that achievement, and at worst fails while daring, his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat.
Love that.
And I think I've probably lived my life a bit like that. Having a crack at different things, and some of them work out, some of them don't. Hopefully more work out than don't, and I think that's probably been the case. Yeah.
And is there anything that you regret doing that you wouldn't do again, if you're happy to share?
Well, fast forward, and I won the next election, and became the leader of the opposition. And, your political listeners and watchers will realise that in a leadership challenge I ended up getting rolled, and by one vote. The vote was 17-16.
Sure.
I won't tell you about the one person who switched sides, but
no.
the Liberals listening will know. And so I lost by one vote, and not long after that I said, oh, well, I'm out of here, and I quit. And look, to be quite honest, had I hung around, who knows, I may have ended up being the Premier of the state at some point in time, but, the upside of that is most politicians get carried out in a box because they don't know when to quit.
Yeah.
Whereas I did leave, but I left. I was only in my 30s at the time, and I thought, oh, well, bugger you lot, I can go and do other things, and I did. But maybe had I, just sort of eaten a bit of humble pie and, worn that 17-16 defeat and hung around for a while, things might have been different. But, there's no point in regretting these things.
Do you feel that business and politics has quite a bit in common?
Yeah, a lot. And I made a speech only last week to the Australian Shareholders Association, and I said the similarities are quite remarkable. I did chair a couple of public companies when I got out of politics, and when you're the managing director or running a public company, you've obviously got a board, and the board often pulls you up and stops you from doing the stuff you think needs to be done. So there's a constant level of frustration often between the MD and the board. And in politics, when you're the leader of the party, you're effectively the managing director of the party. You've got a shadow cabinet, and of course you come up with all these great ideas, and the shadow cabinet equally sort of puts a stopper on those ideas. So there's a similarity between a board and a shadow cabinet. And in the public company world, you've got stockbrokers who are raising money for your company, and then they sort of think they own you a little bit. And in the political world, you've got political donors who, put a lot of money into your campaign, and, then equally, some of them can become a little problematic after that. And then, of course, you've got shareholders in the public company world, hard to ignore them, right?
Of course.
And if you ignore them, you do so at your own peril. And as a politician, you've got voters, and if you ignore them, you do so at your own peril. So, there are a lot of similarities between the two.
And Matt, walk us through putting yourself in such a public position. Again, I go back to being like business, right? So we have our brand, we put ourselves, out in media, on social media. And for a lot of business owners, that's really scary to do. How did you, I guess, navigate that process of putting yourself out there, potentially being hit with a few naysayers? How did you go about that?
You're talking about politics or business now?
I guess in terms of politics, about putting yourself out there on a very public platform, laying yourself open to all sorts of things. I guess the similarity I'm drawing is that it's like business owners who put themselves out on social media. And, they speak about what they do, and it's also a very public platform. And a lot of them have this fear that if I put myself out there, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be criticized, the imposter syndrome just rules rifely. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think the secret sauce is not to be too serious about it. And just harking back to what I said a minute ago about our campaign was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We have 20 or 30 people in yellow T-shirts, in the town square every Saturday morning.
The atmosphere must have been great.
And there was a lot of banter going on, and one of my guys would know this person walking past and collar them, and it was a lot of fun, right? And my advice to people, getting into social media and YouTube and all of that, is you've got to have a bit of fun. If you take yourself too seriously, I don't think it works that much. You've got to have a bit of banter and a bit of fun. And I think that sort of negates that little bit of scariness, for putting yourself out there, I guess.
Yeah. And in terms of any negative feedback, do you kind of just water for ducks back?
Hey, I'm an ex-politician, right? So, depending on the cycle, either 48% of people hate you or 52% do, right? So I reckon I'm pretty well adjusted to, negative feedback.
Yeah. So what would that look like? Would you kind of listen to it? Okay, sure, whatever, kind of move on, or?
Well, it depends. You can't respond to everything and everyone. So in my day, we didn't really have social media. So the game changed remarkably. Not long after I left, there were a few people starting to toy with Facebook. And to be honest, I don't know what I would have done if it was the Facebook era when I was in politics. Do you respond to everybody? And, there would be obvious, Labor Party people that are, bombing your Facebook page.
Yeah,
and then... to the uneducated, you think everybody hates you, but actually that's a set Labor Party piece. And, maybe the Liberal Party might have done something like that as well. You'd see it in letters to the editor in my day, right? So, the Labor Party people in Kalgoorlie would all get together and dream up some nasty letter they'd write to the editor about how I was the devil incarnate or something. But... at the end of the day, they don't know me, really. Why would you take it personally? Somebody doesn't know you.
Yeah.
You've never met them. They don't really know anything about you. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you've just got to win the war,
Yeah, we had I had Mike Maddich on the show as well, and he recently ran, and he just said he couldn't believe the stories that were conjured up. And I think is it Reddit or something?
Yeah,
There's a whole bunch
Reddit's
of stories
one,
that popped up there, and he's like, they're not even true. And people are commenting and just, going to town on it. So it's just very interesting.
Well, look, in my space now, we're at the epicentre of the small cap public company world, with a very large client base of managing directors of listed companies that are in our boardroom every few days, and I love them all. They're just such interesting entrepreneurial people who are really doing interesting things and experts in their field, and they are very much like I was as a politician, but they're in the social media world.
Yeah.
And there's so much misinformation out there about public companies, and there's all these blog sites, maybe like, Hot Copper, for instance, where people will get on there who aren't always that well educated about a particular company they're talking about, or B, an industry, and just some of them just talk rubbish. And it's a constant battle amongst my clients. Do we respond to that, or do we rise above it?
Yeah.
And there are arguments, both ways. My view is the Donald Trump approach, right? Respond to everything. Get in there, get down and get down. Now, that's hard, right? Because it takes a bit of an armour coat to do that.
Yeah.
But my advice to Bulls and Bears clients, whenever we have this discussion, Get down and dirty in the trenches with them. Correct them every time that they're wrong. But don't do it with invective or nastily, but take the opportunity to correct them every time. And eventually it'll put those uneducated people back in their box, right? Because they know the managing director is going to come in over the top of your blog post and make you look silly, right?
Yeah.
So, but most of them don't want to do it, right? They don't want to get down and dirty and tangle with people in the mud. But I guess it's my ex-political nature in a Labor seat where you've got to fight with people every day, really, that tells me to do that.
Yeah, I often say the same to my clients. Like if they have a bad review, it's always an opportunity to showcase your leadership, to showcase your expertise, to always respond as opposed to just letting it sit there and people can misconstrue whatever they want from it. So,
well, there's so many social media channels now, and this stuff appears in so many places that if you don't respond to it, it can take hold.
True.
And but I understand most managing directors of listed companies don't want to, and they've got better things to do.
Sure.
But it can have an impact.
And Matt, how important do you think social media is as a business owner?
It's everything everywhere. We publish in the mainstream media, and we're very thankful that's our point of difference. And those big media brands are never going away, but you have to supplement them with social media. It's just so important. It really is.
I have the same convos with my clients. That's why I'm asking. And a lot of them just want to avoid it like a plague. But I always say it's an opportunity to build profile, to educate your audience as well. So it's super important to be on there.
Well, I mean, AI is about to change the world.
Yeah.
It is the most incredible bit of technology that's ever visited us in the history of this planet.
I agree.
When the internet came out, we all thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was. But the internet is going to pale into insignificance when people harness the power of AI.
Yeah.
Even now, I mean, the advanced version of ChatGPT will knock your socks off.
Yeah.
The things it can do is just incredible. As a research tool, we might want to, we might be writing an article about an ASX listed, gold company, and we might want to find out how many other companies are producing gold in Western Australia, and maybe more than 100,000 ounces a year. Well, ChatGPT will tell me that in about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Now you can't fully trust it because it hallucinates a bit.
It does,
but it gives you a path to go off and do your own research on. But the computing power of it is really incredible, and it's going to change the world, and it's going to present. Well, there are going to be two sides to that coin, right? A, it's going to make a lot of people's jobs redundant.
Yeah.
And B, it's going to present commercial opportunities the likes of which we've never seen before. Which one of those two do you want to be in?
Yeah. Matt, I'd love to know your thoughts on branding. Now, being in the space, could you please share with us how does a brand impact a business or even a personal brand?
Yeah, so, look, years ago, a mate of mine and I started another business called Panzer Products Australia. And at the time, I think I was the Shadow Minister for International Trade when I was in politics. And in that role, I moved around a bit, and I used to go to China a bit. And I'd visit all of these massive factories that might have been making cars or doors or ovens or anything. And you literally couldn't see the back end of these factories. They're the most amazing things.
Yeah.
And I used to say to all of them, what do you pay your tradesmen an hour? And the answer was always $2 an hour. I started thinking, gee, there's something in that. And then when I got out of politics, I went back up there and started a business importing essentially big boys' toys, right? It was things that I was a bit interested in. So, four-wheel quad motorbikes and bush buggies and plasma TVs and outdoor spas.
Definitely boys' toys.
So I had a warehouse down in O'Connor, and it was like, I'd take my mates in there and their sort of heads would spin off their shoulders looking at all this stuff. But then there was two ways that I could have done that, right? So we were selling those products. We were selling bush buggies and motorbikes and spas and things, or we could sell them all under a singular brand. And I came to the view that a singular brand was the way to do it. And so, that was a Panzer plasma TV, or it was a Panzer motorbike.
Yes.
And I thought that it was the brand that made it hang together. when I got a real handle on China, I decided to manufacture some boats up there because I've always been into boats. And I got a naval architect in Queensland to sort of, well, first of all, I pretty much pinched every good idea off every 36-foot sports cruiser on the market and put them all into one package. And I got a naval architect in Queensland to draft up the CAD drawings. And I dragged my bag around China, 14 different boat factories to say, what about building some boats for me? And I found one in a place called Suzhou, just out of Shanghai. And they said, well, yes, but we need to build 2 up front to make it worthwhile. And oh God, it's a bit frightening, like 300 grand a boat.
Oh my goodness, wow.
And I said, all right, well, let's do it. And a mate of mine, Aaron Freestone, and I did that together. And again, branding we decided was going to be super important. And we came up with the brand Magnum. And
cool.
So we had 5 stars on it. And so, the 5 stars associated was a 5-star boat. And they were beautiful boats. There was nothing on the market as good as that because we had full design control and we just packed it full of this stuff. And we brought the first boat back and sold it, made about $100,000 profit out of the first boat. And we thought, how good's this? We'll do 10 or 15 of these a year and we've got a business. And then the GFC hit. And so we got caught with a second boat. So if you ever see a Magnum boat out there, they're the rarest boats in the world. There's only 2 of them ever built.
That means the value goes up, right?
But in terms of your question, both of those little businesses we wrap brands around, and we were developing the brand every which way we could.
Yeah. And Matt, you've run companies, everything from auto parts to vending machines to media. What's a common thread that ties all your ventures together?
Well, I think I sort of go back to where I started before, and that is that the difference between a good idea and a great idea is taking action.
Yeah.
And I've taken a lot of action in 20 or 30 years.
You have.
Yeah, I won't tell you about the ones that didn't work so well, but the ones that did worked really well. But I think you've got to take action. And the other thing I would say is be curious.
Yeah.
And I say it to my staff as regularly as I can. I say it to my kids. If somebody says something, don't just let that sentence pass you by. Be curious and capture the sentence and drill into it and understand it. And ultimately, I think that's what makes you a good businessman if you're curious. And I mentioned before we have our ASX listed clients in our boardroom briefing us on their project.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure they're exhausted when they get out. But I'm pretty sure when they do leave, they realise that I fully understand their company and their project because I'm curious, and I'll drill all the way down into a particular issue involved in their project or their company. And you might see something on TV, you might be at a barbecue, somebody says something to you, I'll capture it and I'll go home and these days I'll ask ChatGPT about it, right?
Yeah.
But being curious can often lead to opportunities. And the other thing is go places, do stuff.
Yeah.
Say yes to that lunch or say yes to that breakfast or whatever, because opportunities come out of those things. And, over time, I can tell you multiple events that I just really couldn't be bothered going to, and I pushed myself, and then all of a sudden some opportunity comes out of it. So be curious and go to stuff is the answer to your question.
Yeah, I love that. The same's happened to me. There's been events I'm like, oh my goodness, I'd rather just, sit on the couch with my dogs or read or something. And then, you end up going and, just a chance encounter happens and it works out really well.
Yeah.
Matt, how has business changed you?
Well, I don't know that it has, because I've been in business since I was 21.
Yeah.
If you call politics business as well. How has it changed me? Well, I mean, the commercial opportunity changes you. I mean, we're 5 generations of, pretty poor Kalgoorlie people. And not to say that I'm amazingly wealthy now, but we're certainly comfortable enough.
Yeah.
And business can do that for you, for sure. If you can get it right. And these days, the opportunities are exponential because of the online nature of businesses. I mean, I was watching a YouTube podcast last night, and some guy was interviewing another guy who's made a lot of apps over time, and he was going through the what they call the MRR, so the monthly recurring revenue from the apps, and some of these things had 100 grand, 200 grand a month in monthly recurring revenues because if you can get it out there into the online ether and it works, it really works. Whereas in my day, we used to have a sales rep in a ute driving around knocking on the door of a mechanical workshop saying, hey, what about buying spare parts from us, right? And so, if you can, people, I've said to people recently that I've stopped watching TV shows at night. I'm now just watching YouTube videos about AI and I'm rapidly making myself an expert on AI. I'm nowhere near nowhere near there yet, but that's my goal. And so instead of watching, some silly TV show, I'm watching YouTube videos about AI, and I'm loving it, and I'm seeing commercial opportunities everywhere in it.
I'm the same. I can't watch movies lately or TV. I'd rather watch YouTube, something educational that just expands your mind, because I find some TV shows are so boring.
Or the real life Biz Chronicles.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well, that's great. There was a question I wanted to ask, Matt. I've gone blank. I'm so enjoying our chat. So in terms of a brand story, now I did see you in action, which was great. And I hope it's okay to share, I won't say who the client was, came in, into your boardroom, they started the session, and I really admired how you were able to just expand on everything that they were offering. I guess, is there any advice for our business owner listeners who are potentially doing a pitch deck, they're trying to level up their offering, for a potential investor? Could you give any advice around that?
Yeah, I think, a lot of our ASX-listed clients put out pitch decks or presentations, and I've seen the best of them and the worst of them. First of all, people who start with the market and how big the market is, they don't have a good project, right? So that goes at the end. But ideally, what it is, where it is, how it is, what's the opportunity? It's not hard, right? But you've got to drill right down into, and you've got to give context. I say this to our listed company clients all the time, that you have to write an ASX announcement or a presentation like you're writing it for a first-time reader. And it's shocking how many managing directors of listed companies don't include context in an announcement, because they assume that everybody reading this announcement has read every previous one.
Sure.
And whilst some existing shareholders may have been, you're not really pitching to them, you're pitching to people who might go and buy some shares tomorrow. And so context is really important. And putting things in context, even saying, well, this is the background, this is the history. Even if you've said it in every announcement, it doesn't matter. You've got to give people background and history so they can capture it and where it is, locate them geographically, so you've got a mental picture in your mind where it is, and then what it is, what's the commodity or what's the project, and then what stage is it at. I mean, these are all just little building blocks, but people tend to just sort of throw mud at the page and see what sticks, and it's quite problematic. The other thing, the other bit of advice I would give in some of these meetings is ask questions. When I was chairing a couple of public companies, we would go east and do a roadshow, and we'd have anywhere from 3 stockbrokers in the room up to maybe 10, and sort of pitching the company to them, and so you'd finish your big pitch, and then you go, any questions? And everyone go, no. No. You just know they're not going to buy any shares, right?
Yeah.
But occasionally you'd get this guy who would just pepper you with questions. And I remember walking out of one of the rooms, and I was the chairman and the managing director of the company was with me. And he said, God, that guy was a pain in the ass, wasn't he? I said, no, he's not. Oh. He's probably going to buy shares, right?
Because he was curious,
And so many people are afraid to ask questions because I think they're the only person in the room who doesn't fully understand what's going on. True. Because often the person talking, not asking the questions, is assuming everybody's got a level of knowledge, and often they don't. And then everyone's too frightened to ask a question because I think maybe I'm the only one that doesn't understand what he's talking about. So I'm not frightened to ask questions. I don't care if I drive them mad.
I noticed that day was awesome. I loved it. Matt, would there be one of your, I guess, more unsuccessful stories that you'd be comfortable sharing? The reason I ask is because I know a lot of business owners, we get so bound and wound to what we do. We have sleepless nights, we make ourselves sick, we drive ourselves almost crazy for stuff that doesn't work out. Is there perhaps a story you'd be comfortable sharing with us, please? Yeah, well, Panzer Products wasn't a great business in the end, even though we had a warehouse full of product. And at the time I was still stuck in the old mindset. And, the old mindset was you employ a sales rep, because I used to be one,
and you give them a ute, and then they go around and wholesale, because we were buying these things, very, very well, directly from the factories that were making
Sure.
them. And you go around and knock on all the doors of the shops and you say, hey, can we wholesale this product to you? And you get a few sales and things like that. And then occasionally we'd get caught with a bit of stuff, right? So, I remember we brought in 96 electric push bikes, beautiful looking push bikes with our Panzer logo on it.
Cool.
And, they didn't sell as well as we thought, and I think we'd probably sold about 80 of them or something. And my brother-in-law, who's a very clever guy in the IT space, he told me about this thing called eBay. And he said, well, you want me to put them on eBay? And I said, well, what's eBay? He said, well, online thing. I can put those last 12 or 13 or whatever it was on eBay. I said, okay, no worries. And within 3 days, he'd sold them all.
Yeah.
And I said, mate, you're a genius. Well done, that's great. But it never occurred to me that this should be an online business because it was so early, right?
Yeah.
And then we imported big not big ones, like portable gen sets, and we got caught with about 10 of them. And he said, well, you want me to put them on eBay?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, good, okay. And then, bang, within 2 days they went. And I was still too stupid to realise that doing it the old way with the ute and the sales rep was just the totally wrong approach. And, had I grasped all that at the time, we might have been a Kogan or something like that. And so in the end, that we basically sold all the product off, and then some of it came back. Technically, there was some problems with it.
Sure.
And so, rather than, have a whole heap of grumpy customers, we actually went out and employed a full-time technician. And we fixed everything and we gave it back, and it just became a headache in the end. And so we sold the last bit of product, and then we let the technician go and said, that's way too many headaches.
Yeah.
But had we fully grasped the online opportunity, it would have been, a serious opportunity.
Is there perhaps any advice you could give our listeners in that, I have an expression, if you're in the jar, you can't see the label. So, sometimes in business you find you trying to do the same thing over and over and over, and it's just like hitting your head against a brick wall. Was there any key signs that you kind of missed that you thought, if I'd just done that, it would have kind of worked?
Well,
Would you guess, like,
if we had just gone online with pens and products,
do you
it
know
would
what
have
I'm
been
trying to say?
huge.
Like, maybe there's someone who's doing the same thing and there's a sign right there and they're just ignoring it.
That was certainly a big miss on our part. But look, most of the other things I've built, I've stuck with them for years, and they've been good businesses. And I'm not sure I would have or could have done things too much differently, to be honest. We could have built Goldfields Auto Spares into a multi-site business at some stage, but then I sort of got interested in politics and didn't do that.
Yeah.
Sold my share to my mate, and he did build it into a multi-site business. So,
yeah. And Matt, who's called you out in a way that changed your life for the better?
Who's called me out? Well, depends what your definition of calling out is. But look, I'm not sure. I know people talk about mentors and things like that. And I'm not sure that I could nominate a mentor that I've ever had, to be honest. I guess in many ways my mates are my mentors, right?
Yes.
And I drive them mad with different things, and
Got that camaraderie.
and they tell me pretty straight whether it's a stupid idea or not. But I'm not sure that I've ever had anybody that was really a mentor. Maybe in politics, there were a few people that I observed who really, had themselves under control from a personal perspective. They were debonair, quality, good listeners. People like George Cash or Norman Moore. They were ministers, or they were ministers in the court government, and they were still there when I came in. But they were guys who'd learned how to handle themselves in a crowd or even one-on-one, and very well considered, respected voices. I probably learned a bit from them. There was a manager of Coventry's in my day. In the early days, my job was to go around to service stations, and you've sort of got to just walk in and start a conversation.
Yeah.
And I found it a bit difficult when I was 17 and 18. I was very young to be a sales rep, and And one day, this manager went out with me. His name was Keith Norman, great guy, and he came out on a run with me. And I've never told him this even, but I observed him walking into these places, and the first thing he would do is start asking them questions about themselves. Did you go to the footy, or did you watch the footy on the weekend, or those sorts of things. And what I learned over time is that other people's favourite topic is themselves.
Yes,
and I'm a naturally curious person anyway. And again, I keep harking back to my kids, but I keep saying to my kids, ask people questions about themselves, because whether it's a personal thing or relationship driven or business driven, somebody's always got a point of interest if you're prepared to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a book, I can't remember what it was, somebody was her name, but and it was about the art of conversation, and this guy who had sort of mastered that thing about asking people questions about themselves was at a cocktail party, an upmarket New York cocktail party, and he ran into this big bombastic businessman, who was a billionaire or millionaire or something, and he was asking him, how did you get into business, and what business do you have now, and how are you finding it, and all this, and he noticed towards the end of the night, he'd been with this guy for an hour or two. This guy hadn't asked one single solitary question about him.
Yeah.
Like, not even what's your name, or what do you do, or where do you live?
Wow.
Not a solitary question. So I've come to the view over time that I'm just going to stop talking to those people, right? But the addendum to that story in this book was that 2 days later he got a handwritten note from the guy saying how very much he enjoyed the interaction and what a great conversationalist he was.
Oh my goodness.
And so if you sort of break that down, this guy's saying to himself, well, all I did was ask him questions about himself, and he's writing me letters saying what a great conversationalist I am.
So one-sided.
And so, I read that book 20 years ago, and it's a well-known book. I just can't remember the name, but and it sort of fitted with my natural curiosity where, I meet people, I'm always asking them about themselves.
Yeah, great advice. Matt, what do you wish more leaders were brutally honest about?
Well, on the political stage, I don't know if honesty is the right word, but authenticity. So many political leaders these days, the red light goes on the camera, and the sort of staged speech and the staged look comes into play. Whereas the leaders of old, like, I don't know, the Malcolm Frasers or even the John Howards or, Bob Hawke's or, that natural authenticity in politics is so missing these days. And everybody thinks that they've got to turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah.
And if you can find political leaders who are just authentic and are just talking, but with a bit of self-conviction, right, and self-belief, then, and I can't really think of almost any political leaders we've got at the moment who have that deep level of self-conviction and self-belief and authenticity all mixed in together.
Yeah.
And they don't come along very often. And even in the business world, some years ago I used to take clients around to meet stockbrokers and things, and I would observe people talking to the room who didn't have self-belief, and people who did. Now, the problem with some of the people who've got self-belief, it's not always justified, right?
Yeah, true.
But you should at least start there, because you get an audience, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? If you don't really believe in yourself and in what you're doing, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. So you should at least exude those levels of self-belief, because it'll come back to you in spades. People want to back people with self-belief.
Yeah.
Partly so they can kick him in the shins if they fail and say, God, wasn't that a joke? Look at how much he believed in himself, and he, so there's a bit of that going on. But, people will believe in you if you've got self-belief. And if you believe in your own product, and, I believe in my product in spades. Bulls and Bears is a very big publisher of news across the country, and we do it well, and I believe in it. And when I pitch to potential clients, it's real. There's a level of self-belief in there.
Yeah. And Matt, what role has family played in your business journey?
Well, we've had a very small family, really. So, my family is my mum and my sister.
Yeah.
Who's probably one of my best mates in reality. And, my mum is pushing 88.
Wow, incredible.
And she worked like mad, 2 jobs, as I said earlier, and raised us well in Kalgoorlie. We've we didn't end up on the wrong side of the blocks, and and she built a good life for us, and ultimately instilled in me a sense of literacy. She was very good at literature and spelling, and I probably got that from her. And really, my sister, that's, we're great mates and talk every few days probably.
Yeah, and in terms of your immediate family as well?
Oh, well, my kids, 15-year-old Ava and 16-year-old Charlie, obviously I live for them, it's just a journey to watch them develop and doing things and getting good at things and getting interested in things, and I'm always trying to get them interested in things and different things, trying to get them off their laptops, and I think we've all got that problem.
Yes.
And trying to do all that, but they're great kids, and they're very stable kids and very normal. And it's great to sort of watch what they do and how they do it, and Talia, my partner, it has been terrific for me. There's never a sort of a disagreement over things that we're doing and direction that we're going, and it lets me be me and do what I need to do, and so I'm in a pretty good space.
And I have to ask, what's the story behind the famous smoked brisket weekends, and what does this ritual mean to you?
Oh, well, I've been sort of smoking meat since my mates and I all lived together in a house in Kensington or South Perth. We'd get a big roast on a Sunday. In those days, the Windsor Hotel was, a great Sunday session, and so I'd go out and buy a big roast pork in those days and stick it in the Weber. And then we'd all go off to the pub, Sunday session. I think they throw you out at 9 or 10 back then. And we'd all be starving. None of us had any money. And then our minds would collectively turn to the roast pork in the Weber. And, we'd sort of get home, 3 parts cut. And there were no knives, forks or plates. The lid would come off the Weber and we'd be into it. But over time I got very good at it, and, bought a big Weber, 2-3 years ago, and started smoking brisket, and then I learnt that there's this whole underbelly of people in the US that take great pride in getting a good brisket out. And so, I have quite a few functions at my place, whether it's clients or mates. A few weeks ago I had, I think, 18 managing directors of ASX listed company, all Bulls and Bears clients around the table. And I bought, it started off about 19 kilo ribeye roast, and we trimmed it all up, and I cooked it for hours in the Weber, and you know what, I enjoy doing those sort of things. And somebody once said to me, that the thing that motivates him the most these days is rich human interactions, and I captured that some years ago. And it stuck with me.
Yeah, I've noticed a common thread in your story that you tend to bring a lot of people together as well, and I think that sums it up really well, that rich human connection where people can come together, be authentic and share.
Yeah, and look, I really enjoy it. And I've done a number of those things. Over time, I built a new house a couple of years ago, and I sort of built it with functions in mind. So we've got a couple of good breakout areas that we use and things like that, big long table. And I love it. It's great. Whether it's, either mates and family or clients, the house is pretty well utilised these days. Yeah.
And Matt, if you could go back to your 21-year-old self and give yourself, I want to say, 2 pieces of advice, what would it be? Well,
don't be so hot-headed. I mean, in my original plan was to be a lawyer. And, I always had a great interest in the law, and I thought, well, I'll become a lawyer. And obviously had to go through year 12 and all of that. And all of my friends had left school and gone and got apprenticeships. And so, they had money, they had cars, they had girlfriends, all of those good things. And I was still stuck at school. And one of my mates, Angus, had got his driver's licence. His birthday's the 17th of April. So he was early in the year, got his driver's licence and got a car. And so there was a plan to do a big trip to Esperance for the weekend. And, very excited. One of us got a licence and a car. So I told my mum that we were all heading to Esperance for the weekend. She said, no, I can't go. They can go because they've got jobs and things. You're still at school studying. And anyway, I couldn't live with that.
Yeah.
And so I then changed the narrative and told her we were going camping, which I was allowed to do. But of course, I'm the only one that could ever organise anything out of our group of mates, and
Sure.
so I collected all the money and sent it down to the Esperance caravan park to book a couple of caravans. And it arrived there too late, and so they posted it back.
Oh.
And it arrived back the day before I got home. And so, when I got home, Mum saw the Esperance Bay Caravan Park on the envelope, and she said, "How was camping?" I said, "Oh, it was really good." And she said, "You lying little so-and-so." And so we had an all-in ding-dong, and I quit school. So 3/4 of the way through Year 12.
Oh, yeah.
And, so that my dreams of becoming a lawyer disappeared. Was that ultimately a good or a bad thing? I don't know, but, and you just got to suck a few of these things up,
Yeah, and I think you've lived a wonderful life. Like, it sounds like, it's a great time to be alive, and it sounds like you've really embodied that.
Yeah, and you know what? Yeah, I mean, the older you get, the more you enjoy those rich human interactions with friends, family, clients, many of whom are friends as well.
Yeah.
And, you've got to earn a quid and you've got to run your business well and do all of that. But ultimately, those rich human interactions are what sort of spurs me on a bit.
Yeah. And Matt, before we sign off, any final words of wisdom to the business owners out there?
Just take action, right? That's the thing. There's so many opportunities out there in the marketplace in so many different fields. You don't want to die wondering.
Yeah.
And you can take action relatively cheaply these days with social media and all those sort of things. Just have a crack at it.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thank you so much for everything you've shared today. I appreciate you coming on the show. I know I met you only recently, and, you didn't hold back. You just said, yes, Trace, I'm in. So thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
Great to be here and terrific ideas. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Chat soon.
Okay.